Welcome to this Houston Newsmakers Extra with Dr. Adam Kuspa, who's the president of the Welch Foundation, which more than 65 years has been providing funding for scientists who actually do the research that is needed to develop the vaccines and those kinds of remedies that we have for the diseases. Dr. Kuspa, talk about how much focus is put on the money and where you decide the money is going to go on a yearly basis. How do you determine where that goes?
Well, the real driving force behind the Welch Foundation is our scientific advisory board, internationally renowned scholars in chemistry and related fields who do all of the reviews for us and recommend projects for funding.
This pandemic that we're in right now, does that rise the level of participation of those scientists that you have, or have they been going pretty much hardcore, hard charging across the board nonstop? It's just now that the general population is now paying a lot of attention to what's happening in your scientific community.
Yeah, the chemists and biochemists that we fund have been working in the backgrounds on the basic science aspects or the fundamental aspects of things such as how human viruses interact with human cells. So if you ask, how does the coronavirus number 2 enter a cell, that's all about the biochemistry of how the virus interacts with the surface of the cell. That's sort of where our researchers spend their time working. But we do give out grants, they're not contracts. And so scientists are free to follow their curiosity and follow the important projects. So a number of our funded researchers have turned their attention towards trying to solve the problem of COVID-19 in terms of trying to identify small molecules which might represent therapies for the pandemic.
So many people now are interested in, okay, when are we going to get a vaccine? When are we going to get a treatment? All those kinds of things. We talked previous to this program, and we talked about SARS, which was a similar kind of virus, maybe not as contagious. There were some things about SARS, but the vaccine never came to be, correct? Absolutely.
And many of your viewers may know that at Baylor College of Medicine and Texas Children's Vaccine Institute, a SARS vaccine was being worked on. And then the epidemic that began around the world in SARS sort of went away, probably because of the sort of low infectivity of that particular virus. It sort of just disappeared from the population. And so interest waned in developing a vaccine for that particular virus. But I think this virus that we're dealing with now should provide a lesson that consistent funding for vaccine work for threats to human health of all sorts should be consistent and not depend on sort of what's in the headlines in that particular month or year.
Certainly. Is this based upon what you understand about this virus as opposed to SARS, which is another type of virus, this level of contagiousness with this virus, is it far different than what we've seen in the past?
I'm not being a human virologist, I would just be speculating, but it seems pretty clear to me that the difference is in the ability of asymptomatic people that have the virus, that are shedding the virus, to infect other people. I think with something like, I think your viewers would understand the influenza virus. If you have the flu, you're infectious for a couple of days and you're not walking around because you feel horrible and you're lying on the couch at home. Mm-hmm. But with COVID-19, apparently people can shed virus for a few days or a week before they feel symptoms and weeks after they recover from their symptoms. And so they're potentially infectious for a number of weeks. And if I had to guess, I would say that's what's causing the problems, is the sort of undetected transmission of the virus through the population.
Biochemistry has been your background, correct? Among other things. So going forward here, as you look at how this virus works its way through, and the governor has determined that the state is going to be opening now in gradual process, the way it's being done, do you see that as the positive way to do it? Because as you talked about the fact we may have to live with this COVID-19 virus in various ways. We lived with SARS until it went away. This may not go away, but we're going to have to learn how to navigate life while it's here. Are we opening the state the way it should be open, you think?
Well, far be it for me to comment on a decision like that. I always, of course, wish our leaders well in terms of these tough decisions, but I would just make the following point. nothing has changed with respect to the COVID-19 epidemic from Thursday in April to Friday, May 1st, today, with the biology of the virus. It's still out in the community. So I understand absolutely the need to open up the economies. I think a lot of the states have reasonable plans moving forward, combining testing, detection, sequestration, and protection of vulnerable populations. And we'll have to see how it goes over the next few weeks. That's usually about 14 days from exposure to symptoms. And so assuming the infection rate does not increase dramatically and the hospitalization rate does not increase dramatically, that'll be a good thing.
You made a good point of talking about nothing has changed from, a few months ago to now. And the difference is how we've socially distanced, how we have taken care to do things with masks and that sort of thing going forward. In that case, that makes sense that as someone in your business, if we don't have a treatment, really, not yet, and we don't have a cure or we don't have a vaccine, not yet, then it's up to us individually to do what we can to kind of avoid getting it in the first place.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said in the earlier interview about vaccines being a very important driver of human health and extension of lifespan over the last 140 years or so. The other two on that list are antibiotics, of course, but just public hygiene, turns out, public sanitation going back into the 1800s has done more to promote human health than any treatment we've come up for any particular disease. So you're quite right. Just washing your hands, worrying about what you've been exposed to and wearing a mask now could go a long way towards muting the impact of the disease.
Good point. Good point. How optimistic are you that the scientific community will be able to come up with a vaccine for COVID-19 that we're facing now?
I'm optimistic by nature. The technology for some of these 102 different vaccines that are in development, it's much more advanced. It's not simply taking the virus and inactivating it as it is in sort of the flu virus or the polio virus. There's pretty amazing new technology to take pieces of the instruction booklet for COVID-19 virus and put it into other viruses that are not harmful to humans. But it's still, a vaccine discovery is still a hit or miss process. We talked about in our earlier phone conversation, the world's record from start to finish for introducing a new vaccine is the mumps vaccine, I believe in the 1960s, and that was 4 years. And it's also, as your viewers will note, we still don't have a very effective vaccine for HIV/AIDS, and that's been worked on for 30 years.
Right.
Or thereabouts.
Well, that's a reality check, that's for sure. Dr. Kuspa, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time. We appreciate what your foundation does. Thank you for what you do, and good luck to the scientists you're funding along the way.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great to be with you, Canberra.